This is a very exuberant transit with high energies. You feel physically strong and fit, and you are more willing to be active and take chances than at other times. Vigorous physical activity is one of the best ways to use this energy, which strengthens the body and allows you to accomplish more than usual. This is quite a common transit when women give birth, for that is a kind of physical action that it seems to favor especially. However, and itself this transit does not indicate pregnancy. A keyword phrase for this transit in one book is fortunate action, which sums up its strength quite adequately. Almost anything that you direct your energies to, especially an activity that requires a lot of energy, will seem to flow and happen as if you were not making any effort at all. It is simply important to realize, however, that you are in fact working quite hard after this transit is over, and even during it to some extent you will need to stop a while and rest. One of the problems at this time is that because you don't realize how hard your body and mind are working, there is a real danger that you will overwork yourself. Certainly, if you are not in excellent physical condition, you should not take up heavy physical work without preparing for it, but that is just what you might do with this transit. The same tendency can mean that you will be accident-prone under this influence. It is not that the transit is accident-prone, but that you are inclined to take foolish risks on the assumption that nothing can go wrong. This is a good time to begin a new project as long as you don't overstand yourself. You have much more initiative than usual, and you can accomplish a great deal by yourself. Working with others may be frustrating because it is hard for you to put up with their slower pace. Often this transit is expressed through doing something that requires a magnificent sense of timing or planning. Or you will do something that works out very well for you in the long run. Even if it doesn't require great energy, it will pay great dividends in the future. During this transit your ideas will be aroused as they seldom are at other times, and you will approach life with a greater sense of compassion. People who cannot help themselves will win your sympathy, especially whether you encounter them personally or through working with others in a charitable enterprise. Your primary concern is to help individuals by giving them a hand. You may be less concerned with transforming the social order that has given rise to the condition that oppress the people you are dealing with. Your interest in spiritual, religious, and mystical philosophy is likely to grow at this time, and you may become involved in a group that is studying these subjects. This world no longer seems to meet your needs adequately, so you have to turn inward to find a world that can give you what you really need. Here too you will discover that the ego drives for self-gratification and self-assertion may be the major factors in preventing you from getting what you want out of life. At this time the demands of the ego must be quieted at least a little so you can hear what the inner self is really saying. Unfortunately, there is another side to this transit which you should watch for. Some people develop a feeling of false happiness, like living in the dream world of an opium smoker with no basis in reality. You may feel that everything is all right when it is not, or you may feel that you can do anything you want and get away with it. That is why this transit is often associated with gambling or taking risk with limited resources, often with disastrous results. This is not a very good transit for investments, not because you will necessarily lose out, but because you just won't know for sure and you will be tempted to gamble even when it is a poor risk. For the same reason in business deals, be sure you are not the victim of a massive misrepresentation. With this transit it is best to avoid purely selfish concerns, for when your actions are thus motivated you are most likely to encounter the negative side of the transit. This is not a good time to strike out to further your own self-interest in life. Your energy level is low and you are subject to fits of discouragement and malice. This is one of the more difficult transits of Neptune because the nature of Mars and that of Neptune are very much opposed to each other. Mars in your horoscope stands for your ego drives, but Neptune manages to pull the rug out from under them. Mars makes you assert your individuality and take the necessary actions to establish your place in the world among other people. Whatever you do along these lines, working to get ahead in your job, beginning a new enterprise, or embarking on a program of vigorous mental or physical activity, Neptune will make it difficult for you to succeed. It is not that you are unlikely exactly, but that you don't have enough push to follow through. Under this transit your efforts are likely to be half-hearted. Even if you want to do something you may just feel too tired. Another side of this transit is that you may get involved in an activity or project that is dishonest, misrepresented, or simply subversive, although not necessarily politically. You may not be aware that it is dishonest, but if you are and choose to be involved anyway, you are running an enormous risk. Avoid any scheme that you know to be dishonest, because with this transit you simply cannot count on it coming out favorably for you. This is not a good time to advance yourself, but try not to get discouraged, for that will not help you. Instead, cut your losses and disengage yourself if possible from any activity that could create difficulties. Get into a position where you can afford to be unconcerned about results. Detaching yourself from your own energies is the best way to deal with this transit. Act because you enjoy the action, not because you are trying to win. If you can take this course of detached consciousness, you may learn something about how your life works. In fact, you may learn that your own efforts have fouled you up. In your eagerness to succeed, you may have aroused opposition that was not expressed openly but waited subversively in the wings to trip you up. On the physical level, this transit can give rise to infections that severely debilitate the body. It is a good idea to adopt a rigorous physical regimen and avoid situations that tax your physical strength or expose you to disease. Also, avoid using drugs during this transit unless absolutely necessary, whether medically prescribed or not. Your body is usually sensitive to poisons now. This can be a very confusing and disorienting time, but it can teach you basic truths about life if you are able to get over the fear and confusion that sometimes accompany this transit. The problem is that this transit makes you feel unsure of where you are going in life and why. The effects of this transit depend upon your attitude toward what you do for a living in the broadest sense. If you regard your work as a justification for your existence, something that gives your life purpose it would not otherwise have, then this will be a very difficult time. Neptune will make you wonder whether there is any purpose in what you are doing and whether there is any particular reason to go on. Your disillusionment may come about through personal defeats with others or through some incident that shows that your work was not what you thought it was. Perhaps another person may misrepresent something or deceive you. No matter what you do during these years, be careful about deceiving others or being deceived by them, for such actions could have very negative consequences. You may also feel discouraged because people oppose your efforts to get ahead for no apparent reason. You may decide that your present calling is not adequate, that you should change to an area that will have a more meaning for you. However, you really need to change your whole attitude toward what you are doing. You should not be doing something just because it justifies your life or gives you a sense of purpose. It should be an inappropriate form of self-expression that allows you to be yourself most successfully. At the same time, you should try to be less attached to what you are doing. You are not what you do, even though people often respond to the question, "What are you?" by giving their profession. Probably it is the fact that your ego is wrapped up in your work that is causing problems with others. This transit favors certain types of work, for example, social service work with poor or disadvantaged people, or with those who have emotional drug or alcohol problems. This transit will not be destructive if you work in a spirit of helping others. This transit can also bring you a great interest of psychic, spiritual, and occult matters, and you may even become more involved with these subjects in your profession. During this transit, your attention will turn toward your profession, career, social status, and reputation. This is a time when you will try very hard to move ahead in any or all of these areas, and any reasonable effort should result in considerable progress. For most people, this is a time of getting ahead, but you should observe several cautions. First of all, it is very important to avoid being overbearing, domineering, and arrogant. Some people have trouble with superiors at this time because this transit can indicate an inflated ego that is thinking you are much more than you are without anything to back it up. If you start thinking that you are truly significant or special, sit down and review your real accomplishments to see if they justify your feeling. But even if they do, be careful not to behave in a way that will cause others to resent you and even work against you when this transit is over. However, this is not a general problem, for most people have been taught to underrate their achievements. In that case, this transit is likely to signify recognition for what you have accomplished. You can expect a promotion at work, public recognition, or the esteem of your contemporaries during this time, as long as you don't fall into the trap described above. You will also feel more confident about yourself, and this may be one of the few times in your life when you are really in touch with what you can do. You may also experience other efforts of this transit. For example, you may have to travel in connection with your work, or you may have increased dealings with foreign persons. It is also possible that you may change to a field of work that pertains to the nature of Jupiter. These fields include medicine and healing and the law, higher education and travel. In this case, you should not expect the same recognition that you would if you stayed in your established line of work. Mars, the planet of ego drives, is very much at home in this, the house of highest ego expression. This transit indicates many positive energies and, as usual, certain problems if you are not careful and do not recognize the needs of others. More than any other, this transit arouses your ambition to achieve. If you can identify with the project, you will work extremely hard at it until it is done. It is especially important now that you find an independent project that requires your individual initiative and effort. You should try to gain independent authority and your work at this time, because you are not likely to be very tolerant of other people's authority over yourself. You prefer to be your own boss, but your energy will make an impression upon people who are in a position to help you as long as you do not challenge them unduly. One of the problems of this transit is that you are much more likely to be in conflict with authority figures than at time. Parents, employers or bosses, or even government officials may feel it necessary to stop your efforts in various areas. But this will happen only if you insist on being a threat to them. If you can't align your interest with theirs, these people can help you. Conflicts with coworkers may arise if they feel threatened by your efforts to get ahead. You should try to play down such conflicts unless something real is at stake, for they will only block your efforts and make advancement more difficult. If you can remain reasonably conscious of other people's interests, did not come into conflict with them more than absolutely necessary, this transit can help you make a great progress toward the objectives you have set for yourself. But if you feel that you must defeat every challenge from others at all costs, it will probably cost you all progress you might have made. In many ways, Pluto is at home with this transit, since its symbolism is very closely related to that of the 8th house. Both relate to death and resurrection symbolically as well as literally. During this transit, the issues of major transformation, even death, rebirth, and regeneration, will become more significant in your life than ever before. Although your own life is not in any great danger, there may be deaths of people around you that will have a very important effect upon you. Such a death may radically change your life circumstances in some way, or forsake confrontation within you about the nature and meaning of your life. In general, your concerns will become quite deep during this transit. You may become involved with the occult or other teachings that relate to the issue of life and death. You will find it difficult to accept explanations that do not get to the very bottom of the matter and explore its innermost parts. This will be true for every question you ask, not only questions of your own life and death. You are seeking the answers to mysteries. On an entirely different level, this transit can affect possessions and resources held jointly with others, a spouse's finance, for example, or corporate finances. A major change may occur in your life through one of these sources. This is not a good time to go into debt, because indebtedness will put you very much under someone else's control. One possibility that combines both principal themes of this transit is that of an inheritance. However, for this to happen, there should be other transits that reinforce this possibility, as well as indications